Okay, so what do we make of Understand, Ted Chiang's 1991 short story that explores the implications of superintelligence? In this case, intelligence achieved through a fictional compound known as hormone K. As you learn in the story, this substance has been concocted by scientists working for the US government. What is Chiang suggesting in this story? As you also know, our protagonist, Leon Greco, has been treated with an experimental drug that takes him from a vegetative state after a drowning accident to hyperintelligence. So, at least in the beginning, this happens without Leon's consent. He's basically experimented on by the US government, brought back from the dead, basically, with hormone K. It brings to mind modern Marvel superheroes, doesn't it? Think Captain America, enhanced to the peak of human physical perfection by an experiment, a super soldier serum administered by the US government during World War II. That was intentional, but there were, of course, scientific accidents that gave other superheroes their powers. The Hulk, Ant-Man, and Spider-Man, to name a few. So Leon's in good company here. But his superpower is hyperintelligence, not super strength, size shifting, or superhuman agility with the ability to stick on surfaces. The point is, this is a familiar trope. The freak lab accident or the government experimenting on vulnerable people to enhance their abilities. But the resulting superpower isn't usually cognitive. In this story, it is. Quick sidebar in terms of the writer's craft. Let's just acknowledge the challenge Chiang set out to tackle here, conveying the experience of a superhuman or transhuman being through a first-person narrative. Think about that for just a moment. Given the vast difference between Leon's IQ and the reader's IQ, there are bound to be some junctures of the plot that we don't quite comprehend. Otherwise, Leon wouldn't be a believable character. Take, for example, the battle in that final scene. Leon tells us this about Reynolds' fatal blow. He didn't design the command to be spoken. It's not a sensory trigger at all. It's a memory trigger. The command is made out of a string of perceptions, individually harmless, that he planted in my brain like time bombs. The mental structures that were formed as a result of those memories are now resolving into a pattern, forming a gestalt that defines my disillusion. The reader gets the general gist, the fact that Reynolds had followed Leon into a grocery store 3 days prior, passing behind Leon unnoticed, and it's this memory, the random psychedelic patterns on a t-shirt worn by a teenager in that store apparently, coupled with the modulated sounds that Leon hears when he first enters Reynolds' apartment, plus presumably a string of other memory triggers that force Leon's brain onto a fatal path. So the self-destruct command isn't a sensory trigger, as Leon first suspected. It's not a spoken word, for example, but a memory trigger. That part we get, in a general sense anyway. As the reader, though, we don't understand the details or even the nature of all this. As one commentator notes, that's strictly superhuman territory. But we understand enough to know Reynolds outsmarts Leon in the end. We should probably note Chiang's background here. He graduated with a computer science degree from Brown University, and he was actually a tech writer in the software industry when he published this collection of short stories in 2002. Interestingly, these days, he's a frequent contributor to The New Yorker, publishing on issues related to artificial intelligence. In fact, in 2023, Time magazine named Ted Chiang one of the most influential people in the realm of AI. So even without being hyperintelligent, as a fiction writer with a technical comp sci background, Chiang often faces this challenge of writing about technical computer science issues to a non-technical audience. I'm not sure what your experience was as a reader, whether you felt he pulled it off, presenting Leon as a believable character while keeping the details of the plot accessible to a, quote, normal reader like you and me. Leon's word, not mine, but many have commented on Chiang's skill in this realm. So back to the original question. What's Chiang doing here? What's his point? We might start with the fact that Leon's desire for superhuman intelligence becomes increasingly insatiable. The government gives him 2 ampules of hormone K, but then he steals and self-administers the 3rd and 4th doses. With that 4th dose, the risk is significant, but he's willing to sacrifice his life to achieve his goal of enlightenment. There's almost an addiction vibe going on here. Leon knows the risks, but they don't deter him. As he explains, of course, there are significant risks. This injection might be the one that causes brain damage or insanity. Temptation by the devil, perhaps, but temptation nevertheless. I find no reason to resist. Even after taking the 4th ampule, Leon anticipates needing to push the envelope once again. He plans to develop mind-computer links of a cyborg variety. So, is the story about hubris? Leon's arrogance and thinking he can acquire the knowledge he seeks? Is he a modern-day Prometheus or Victor Frankenstein who has simply gone too far, overstepped his bounds? You could make an argument for that, I think. Maybe Chiang is cautioning us about the risk of taking our technological pursuits too far, seeking to be like God, or like the Olympian gods in the case of Prometheus. Or, here's another possibility, is the story about human greed? The fact that Leon is pursuing knowledge for his own edification, to the exclusion of everyone else's needs and rights. After all, he seems quite willing to manipulate normals and Wall Street to achieve his personal goal. And what about Reynolds? Is Reynolds the good guy in this story? We know he's already killed at least one person while testing out his self-destruct command, and he seems to acknowledge that other deaths will be necessary. Like Leon, he's also willing to manipulate others, in his case to establish what he calls a global network of influence, even if that network is to create world prosperity. Granted, Reynolds is interested in our well-being, unlike Leon. He wants to save us from ourselves. But he does intend to control us to do that. So, is greed the issue here? Or is superintelligence itself the problem? Is man overstepping his bounds and trying to play God, as we noted before? Or is it the power imbalance between, Leon/Reynolds on one side and the normals on the other? Is that what Chiang's exploring in this story? You could probably make an argument for any of these, and that will be up to you to decide. If we think for a moment, though, about Leon and Reynolds, and this question of whether one is good and one is evil, we need to ask, is that what Chiang's doing? Or does he make it blurry? Is he resisting those binaries? Let's take a moment to just kind of flesh out their differences. We know that Leon has no interest in applying his newfound knowledge, at least not within the realm of science, certainly not to help mankind, as Reynolds intends to. At one point, Leon realizes he might generate spherically symmetric gravity fields, having mastered advanced physics. But he doesn't because he's instantly bored by the prospect. In his words, actually constructing the device wouldn't give me any particular satisfaction since I already know it would work, and it wouldn't eliminate any new gestalts. The humanities seem to be another story. Leon does write a poem comprised of 10 languages he's recently mastered, 6 modern, 4 ancient, and ultimately embarks upon crafting a new language that can be expressed through ideograms. So he's applying his newfound understanding of the humanities. But the point here is that Leon is acquiring knowledge for his own benefit. His end game is self-enlightenment, and as he experiences after taking the 4th ampule of hormone K, here's how he describes that enlightenment. Quote, blinding, joyous, fearful symmetry surround me. So much is incorporated within patterns now that the entire universe verges on resolving itself into a picture. I'm closing in on the ultimate gestalt, the context in which all knowledge fits and is illuminated, a mandala, the music of the spheres, cosmos. Reynolds, Leon's binary opponent, is also super intelligent but pursuing a different goal. There are a few quotes that illuminate this difference. And this is Leon talking here. He, Reynolds, plans to save the world, to protect it from itself, and his opinion of me is therefore unfavorable. I view the world as incidental to my aims, while he cannot allow someone with enhanced intelligence to work purely in self-interest. At another juncture, Leon says, I'm a lover of beauty, he of humanity. And then again, what motivates him, Reynolds, is not simply compassion or altruism, but something that entails both those things. On the other hand, I concentrate only on understanding the sublime. And then finally, we get this observation from Leon as well. He, Reynolds, considers intelligence to be a means, while I view it as an end in itself. As a reader, we're left to grapple with which character is worse. Maybe it doesn't matter. Perhaps the point is that whoever has the superintelligence or the technology that makes it possible, that being or that group is in control. And that ought to give us pause. That's another possibility, another possible undercurrent message. So as we wrap up our thoughts here, let's think for a moment about real-world connections. If you're intrigued by the story and you think you might want to use it as a springboard for your first research paper, what real-world connection might you make? Again, you'll be selecting just one of the 6 stories we're reading. One option, if you work with this story, would be to explore current research on brain-computer interface, BCI. You'll recall that Leon planned to explore that as his next step. He reveals this intention towards the end of the story as he confronts Reynolds and says, my plans for mind-computer links will have enormous repercussions for the world, provoking government or popular reactions that would interfere with his plans. So you might look at companies such as Elon Musk's Neuralink, which has a clinical trial underway currently for brain-computer interface. That image on the right is actually from Elon Musk's website. It's showing the actual Neuralink device that they're currently testing on individuals who are participating in this trial. It's a trial that he's running in Canada. Or maybe you're not interested in brain-computer interface. Maybe you want to research current applications of AI and the debates which have ensued. Can a human being, government, or corporate entity that harnesses the power of AI pose the same threat that Leon and Reynolds did when they placed their pursuits over the individual rights of normals? Perhaps it would be easiest to explore a specific application of AI. In the healthcare sector, for example, is there evidence that AI is being used to benefit specific groups while excluding others, or is it being employed for the greater good of all? In other words, are Chiang's fears realized? Does the real-world connection that you ultimately decide to explore end up challenging the short story's underlying message or reinforcing it? These are all options you might consider if you choose to work with Understand in Research Paper 1. That is a wrap for now.